There are millions of other people directly suffering the effects of this war without attracting much media coverage. The people of Lebanon. Israeli forces have begun ground operations there, and many fear that their goal is to occupy once again the southern part of the country. 1 out of 5 Lebanese citizens has already been forced from their homes. The UN says Israel has wounded or killed the equivalent of 1 classroom of school children per day. Having destroyed entire residential buildings in the middle of Beirut and bombed civilian infrastructure to isolate the south, Israel has also showered Lebanon with propaganda leaflets, boasting openly that it will turn the country into the new Gaza. One news outlet covering these developments is the Beirut-based Megaphone. Its co-founder and managing director, Jean Kassir, joins me now. The Israelis have forcibly displaced hundreds of thousands of people across a broad patch of South Lebanon. Talk to us about what's happening down there and how effectively are journalists able to report from that area?
Yeah, thanks for having me. To start, to give some fact and figures, around 20% of Lebanon is displaced as we speak. So it's 1 million people out of a 6 million people country. It's extremely difficult to report from the south. Israel is clearly trying to isolate the south. This comes after marking entire areas that amount to 15% of Lebanon in red on the map, which basically means an evacuation order for everybody within those areas, including a big city like Tyre and entire villages. So the intention is very clear. Nobody should get close to the south. It's extremely difficult to have an actual verification process and getting images that are directly from there. The only journalists who are still daring to go there, most of them are foreign journalists, and most of them have to do it within a security framework. So either within the army or within also some tours organized by Hezbollah, or within special missions that are basically supported or protected by security personnel.
The Israelis are also bombarding the Lebanese with propaganda, with psychological warfare. Walk us through some of the things that they're doing on that score. How reminiscent is this of what we've seen in Gaza? Talk to us about some of the similarities, maybe the differences.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying the differences, like Gaza is a genocide, and it's very important out of respect for what the Palestinian people endured, not to make false comparisons. But the similarities, unfortunately, do exist. It starts with the mass evacuation, basically overnight asking the entire southern suburb of Beirut, which amounts maybe to half of Manhattan, to evacuate. It created a panic among people who flocked to the streets and ended up sleeping in their cars that night. The same happened with the evacuation order I mentioned in the entire southern Litani area. This also is coupled with fake calls asking for evacuation of specific building, which contributed psychological warfare. Add to it the constant buzzing of the drones above our heads, which creates a lot of ambient anxiety in the city, and this preceded the current escalation post-March 2. And finally, what we've witnessed a couple of days ago, which is the leaflets that were dropped from the sky from the warplanes, and those leaflets ask basically the Lebanese to scan a QR code and to join information WhatsApp groups that the Israeli army manages. We should also add to it the discourse of Israeli ministers such as Smotrich, who clearly threatened to turn the southern suburb of Beirut, Dahieh, into a new Khan Yunis. Which adds to a lot of rhetoric of erasure and annihilation that has been coming out of a lot of Israeli officials when talking about Lebanon. And finally, we have the media phenomenon, which is Arikhai Adrai,
Ya Hussein,
the former Arabic-speaking spokesperson of the Israeli army, which constantly not only threatens the Lebanese through those evacuation orders, but also engages with critics that are coming out of social media, which creates further fear. Imagine a person working for the Israeli army responding to a meme or responding to a joke that a comedian, for example, or a social media commentator would say about you. on the one hand, it tries to create some familiarity with the Lebanese audience, but on the other hand, I personally feel that is extremely threatening. It means that they're observing, it means that they're very much aware of all the conversation going on in Lebanon's social media landscape. And finally, they try a lot to weaponize the legitimate criticism that exists in Lebanon against Hezbollah for their own propaganda and for their own discourse that they're here to liberate. While we all know that Lebanon has always been under threat from Israel way before the existence of Hezbollah.
Well, let's dig into that angle right now, the way Hezbollah is perceived in Lebanon. There was a government directive this past week issued to state-run news outlets not to call the organization a, quote, resistance group. So how is Hezbollah perceived by the Lebanese people, by the government there, by the media, and beyond?
I mean, it's very important to mention the broader framework under which we are operating as journalists. We're covering an Israeli war, an Israeli aggression against a deeply divided country. And this division is not necessarily related to our stance toward Israel. I think most Lebanese do not see in Israel any potential ally. The overwhelming majority sees Israel as an aggressor. But the dispute is around Hezbollah's role. Hezbollah is multifaceted. Hezbollah used to be a very legitimate resistance movement up until the year 2000. Until it decided to become more hegemonic at the Lebanese level. And a lot of people who opposed Hezbollah's hegemony in Lebanon paid a very heavy price, including being killed. Another point of disagreement is Hezbollah's deep connection with the Iranian regime. And this is something that created a lot of backlash when the rockets were fired on March 2nd, because it was seen as a direct support for the regime at a time where Hezbollah remained quite passive over a year. When we had more than 10,000 Israeli violation of the ceasefire, we didn't see any rocket being fired. So there is a lot of attention around Hezbollah's role and Hezbollah's motives when it comes to its regional affiliation and also its local hegemony project.
Given all of that, Jean, the context, the politics, how freely are Lebanese journalists able to report on Hezbollah? Are there restrictions? Are there red lines, formal, informal? Is there censorship or self-censorship at play?
I mean, we're in a country that's deeply divided, so this kind of allows for a margin of criticism against the other party. This doesn't mean that Hezbollah has ever been a big fan of freedom of expression. I mean, a lot of journalists paid a very heavy price for their critical stances, the latest being Lokman Slim. But today, as we speak, the main threat on journalists is coming from Israel, because in the 2024 war, we had several of our colleagues that were assassinated, starting with Issam Abdullah, the photojournalist. I'm not saying this to deflect the attention that Hezbollah has clear authoritarian and hegemonic tendencies, but as we speak today, the main threat is coming from Israel.
The work that you do at Megaphone focuses on documenting everyday life under attack. Give us an idea of a recent story that has stood out for you, and how do these kinds of stories challenge the narrative that's out there on Lebanon of a fragmented or collapsing country?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pick one, but I would pick maybe a theme that we're covering, which is the amazing grassroots solidarity efforts. Lebanon is kind of forgotten in this regional conflict. There's not a lot of money that's coming in, like it was the case in the 2024 war. It's still a country that is suffering from a very acute economic collapse. So people have been impoverished for the last 6 years. But still, despite the polarization that exists, despite the sectarian tensions that exist, we still find like remarkable solidarity efforts that are happening at the grassroots level, from community kitchens to initiatives that are providing shelter for migrant domestic workers or for queer people or for people who are not a part of the map of aid, to personal initiatives from restaurants or from shops that are providing washing machines for people who have left their homes, all sorts of grassroots initiatives. This is something that is showing a picture of the country, a country that is still possible. This is what I would call it. At times, the level of division in Lebanon makes you feel that this is an impossible equation. But when you see the solidarity happening organically, despite all forms of political divisions that exist. This is the kind of narrative that Megaphone is showing. We're not denying the divisions, but we're showing another facet of Lebanese society, one that is determined to be resistant to any form of aggression and to also provide aid and consider that any Lebanese displaced is a person that concerns us all.
Jean Kassir, Managing Director of Megaphone, thanks for speaking with us here at the Listening Post today.
Thank you.